Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com, powered by all the Mo pros out there. I am your host, Michael Hartmann, flying solo once again, as we are getting closer and closer to Mopsapalooza 2025. Today, I'm diving into some real talk with a guest who describes himself as a recovering CMO, Ahmed Datoo. Okay, I asked you how to pronounce it, and I've already flubbed it, so I apologize. Has worn the CMO hat and is now leading the charge at allGood as CEO and co-founder. He joins us to share some lessons learned from the inside, why marketing ops often gets overlooked in budgeting, how CMOs really think about impact, and why the future of Martech is moving from rules-based to reasoning-based systems. We'll also explore how AI and digital agents are changing the game and why the human element still matters. So, Ahmed, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining, and please accept my apologies.
It's great to be on the podcast, Michael.
Well, good to have you. And so I said you describe yourself as a recovering CMO. So before, my wife says she's a recovering attorney. So I appreciate the phrasing. But what do you mean by that?
Oh gosh, I mean, where to start? That is such a hard job to be a CMO. It's like one of the only professions that I can think of where to be successful, you've got to be creative, like artistic. You've got to be analytical because now increasingly CMOs are dealing with data. You've got to be good with words, either spoken words as well as written words, because now marketers are influencers and they're showing up at trade shows and speaking on behalf of the brand. Like, what other role exists where you literally have to spike on 3 different dimensions? It's impossible.
Yeah.
So to begin with, like, the expectations for CMOs are really, really high to be good at lots of different things, and it's a really hard job. It's probably the reason why the CMO tenure is so short. And then when you layer on things like a CEO who may not necessarily understand marketing's role and starts having discussion about attribution, like, can marketing prove what sort of value you have? Like, then you start getting conflict between sales and marketing around, did you generate this lead? Did I generate this lead? It's just like, at a certain point, you realize that the reason why you got into marketing was because of it's fun. Like, you like the creative piece of it, you like the strategic piece of it. But when you're dealing with stuff like this, the job no longer becomes fun. And that's why I say I'm a recovering CMO, because that's such a hard job. I'm not sure I want to go back.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I hadn't thought of it the way you talked about, right? All those different dimensions of like needing to be probably more than competent across all those sort of different dimensions, which is typically not found in one person, is actually really, really hard too. Yeah, I think I hadn't heard it put quite that way. I definitely heard things like, when you go to the peers in the C suite or the board or, whatever your kind of organizational leadership structures, like the majority of them have no real experience with marketing either. Right. So add on top of that people don't really understand what it entails.
Well, what's even worse is when everyone has an opinion on marketing. And depending on what the organizational culture is, like, some organizations are very consensus driven. So, like, now all of a sudden, when you want to make a change to the copy on the homepage, you got to review it with like 15 different people. And, like, I don't know. I mean, when have you had like 15 people agree on anything, let alone like what the homepage should look like? You get things like, I think we should be using this color. Like, why are we using this color as opposed to this color?
Right.
And I think this should be in bold versus, and I'm like, no, you're thinking about this as the wrong way. Like,
Yeah.
you hire a CMO and you hire a marketing team because, like, this is their job. This is what they're like. They spent their career just focused on this sort of stuff. And it's okay. People have opinions. And it's fine to understand what people's opinions are, but like, it just compounds the frustration when an organization is like, everyone wants to weigh in on marketing and things move really, really slowly, and you're at a startup and you want to move quickly. And these are all parts of the frustrations of the job.
Yeah, for sure. It's so funny you bring up the 15 people not agree anything. I was once on they call it a pettit jury. I didn't even know what that was, but it's a 6-person jury. And that was hard enough to get people to agree. So
yeah,
12, 15 just doesn't happen. So you have been a CMO, right? When you were a CMO, this is more for the core audience or intended audience, right? As marketing ops professionals, how did you think about marketing operations? And I think, and specifically, how did you think about it when it came to allocating budget for what would be under the marketing ops domain?
I mean, this is a great question. My understanding and appreciation of marketing operations has evolved over the years. When I first became a CMO, I would classify my relationship with MOPS as just a huge disappointment. And the reason for it is I was like, okay, great. I have a team that can be my right hand, so to speak. Like
Yep.
for me, I am a CMO that like I'm driven by data. I like to have an understanding of data, and then that helps either helps influence my intuition, but I like to be able to analyze data. So we run a program. I want to know what was the success of that program. I want to know like which sets of marketing activities are driving pipeline. So to me, I viewed my marketing operations team as like my strategic hand, help me pull together the kinds of analysis that is going to help me make decisions around allocation of spend and what programs should be running, who our ICPs should be, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my expectation going in.
Right.
And what I found was the marketing ops team was like so in the weeds about executing programs, like marketing campaigns and programs.
Yeah. Managing the technology stack.
And managing the technology stack and like managing technical debt and doing integrations and like a new feature has been released by a vendor. It drove me nuts. I was like, why are we wasting time on this? And now mind you, my understanding of marketing operations has evolved. So this was my going in just frustration.
Sure.
And I said, how difficult can this be? Like, why does it take so long to do something like this? And so I tend to learn best by doing. So, of course, I interact with the MOPS team. They're like, you have no appreciation around how difficult it is. I'm like, how difficult can it be to build? At the time, I think we were using Eloqua. So I was like, how difficult can it be to build a campaign in Eloqua? Turns out it's really difficult. And so they would walk me through about like, it is very complex and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to build the campaign. Can I do the next one? And I got hands-on. I figured out how to, I read all the instructions around building emails and campaigns. I was like, this doesn't look too hard. I got the campaign brief. And of course, the campaign brief didn't map what was the email template. There are all these variations. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, we should probably have some guidelines to the team, like stay within the parameters of this. But I'm like, still, it shouldn't be that difficult to do. And then it was just like endless clicks in the system and sitting and waiting, right? Which was something that they didn't communicate to me, which is just the poor user experience of the software and the reality of the software, right? And then there's the back and forth, like between the marketer who requested saying like, don't quite look like the way you've done this. Can we change this to bold? And that required me logging back in the system, doing all these changes. So I began to have an appreciation, having gone through that process myself, of like, okay, I get it. Like, I understand that they are bogged down in kind of building out programs, and I understand why. And I think the other thing I didn't quite appreciate is how many different systems that they would need to touch to do something as simple as build a mail campaign. So it wasn't just Eloqua. It was like there are a variety of other systems that they were touching. And so once I had an appreciation of this, then I had empathy, which is, okay, I get it. Now I understand why they're not able to actually do what it is that I need to do. And so experimented with a whole bunch of stuff. Like, what if I hired an offshore team and try to get rid of the repetitive work? So we tried doing that, and I was hoping that would free up time for my MOPS team to do the strategic, important work that I was really interested in doing. And it didn't, primarily because the offshore team would make mistakes, and invariably in your ideal world, you have enough prep time for a campaign, and I'm guilty of this because I would be like, can we go run this now? It's the middle of the quarter. We're not going to meet our pipeline numbers. We need to spin up a bunch of new campaigns, and like overnight, we got to spin stuff up. And there's always a lag when you're dealing with offshore. So there's a lag in the initial creation of it, and then there was a lag when we needed to do revisions. It just slowed the process down. So I never had really good experience offshoring. So I brought it back onshore. So the question around like how did I think about MOPS? I had this appreciation of like, this is what I want MOPS to do. And by the way, that's what MOPS wanted to do. Like, it's not like I was suggesting something that they viewed was out of their job description. They just simply didn't have the time to do it.
Right.
And so what I ended up doing is, because I'm a technical CMO, I started building my own reports. I was in there. I created a data warehouse. I started building my own sets of reports, and I realized that worked for me, but that doesn't work for most CMOs. Like, I'm not going to be the CMO who's going to be getting into Canva and doing design, because that's not where I spike, right? So, but there are CMOs who go do that, but would not go and like do the snowflake data analysis type stuff that I was doing. So it is just this perpetual problem that I was facing as a CMO, and this desire to be able to drive that organization to help propel marketing, to be able to do great things. And so that's something that was always in the back of my head.
Yeah. It's interesting because the first thing you said really is, what you wanted was essentially insights, right? Right. How are things working? What are the results? How can we talk about it with the rest of the organization? And I suspect, if my experience is any indicator, right, that even if you could have figured out a way to open up time on that team, there might not have been the skill level to really do it in a way that would have been helpful for you, right? Because I think there's I mean, I could get this really, really general, having kids who are in the college age, that like the whole like uh, math curriculum for has really not changed in 40 or 50 years, right? For kids coming, and I think that's a problem. We get people who come out and we just don't know how to really do data analysis, right? Don't know how to put data together, don't know how to interpret it, don't know how to look at it. Can't really talk about the difference between a snapshot in time of something versus something that's over time, and like all those things, right? That are different ways of thinking about it. And that's one of the concerns. One of the things I bring up all the time here is just like we need more people who can do that. And I'm bullish on things like AI tools being able to enable some of that, whether it's by freeing up time and capacity or by helping with doing some of the heavy lifting of data, like organizing data and doing some initial first pass analysis. But do you think the teams you had before would, did you ever get, if I guess first, did you ever get to the point where they could start to do some of that? And did you feel like they had the skills and capability of doing that?
So definitely had the skills to do it. So this comes to like how I hire. Mm-hmm. So generally when I was hiring for anyone in any role within marketing, it was like intelligence, first and foremost, some form of curiosity, and then some degree of domain knowledge. And it was the domain knowledge in marketing ops that always killed me, because I would find amazing people, but they were HubSpot people and we were a Marketo shop. Mm-hmm. And it's just too steep of a learning curve, right? Or I would find incredibly curious, incredibly smart, talented people, but they were, they spiked on a certain set of technologies that didn't exist in our stack. And that's a critical component of it, right? And so you end up making these compromises to get in people who have domain knowledge about the stack. And it's kind of crazy that we make decisions. We need to make decisions based on familiarity with technology as opposed to just smarts. But I was fortunate. The people that I ended up hiring were really good. Had experience with the tech stack, but were really smart. So I felt like if given the time and given a problem, they would go figure it out. right? They may not necessarily know data analysis, but I could probably work with them to say, like, here are the kinds of reports that I'm looking for, and they'd be able
Yeah.
to go figure it out. This is
Yeah.
pre-AI, right?
Sure.
In an
Of course.
AI world, this is what's amazing about AI. Like, I talk about myself, and I like colors. I when given something, I can review it and tell you whether I like it or not. I don't necessarily feel like I've got great design skill. In fact, um, I deliberately stay away from. I told my wife, like, you can handle all the decorations of the house. I won't have any sort of review. The only thing I ask is that I get to handle all the tech gadgets. Like that's going to be my purview, right? So I have
My request my request was just only veto power on like if I really really didn't like something from a design, like I really want to be able to say no, but I only use that card when I'm absolutely
sparingly.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I basically didn't even throw out the veto because I didn't want the reciprocal veto on electronic gadgets I wanted to buy. So
Fair
I'm like,
enough.
you get
Yeah.
you get carte blanche on that. I get carte blanche on electronics. But when it came to design, um, I would it would be very difficult. Like I'd sit down with a designer, and the designer, rightfully so, would ask me a question like, give me your design aesthetic. And early in my career, I was like, I don't know what my design aesthetic is. I'll know it when I see it, which is like the worst thing a designer hears. Like,
Right.
um, how do you work with that? And so early on, it'd be like they'd give me something and I would just tear it apart. And they're like, okay, you clearly don't like that design. Give me a couple of designs that you do like. And so I'd start talking about, here are vendors that I like. And so I began to speak the language of the designer.
Right.
Um, Fast forward to today, now all of a sudden I can be a designer, not a great one, but I can iterate on that design process a lot faster. So I can go into Mid-Journey right now and do, image creation around concepts. I can go into all these coding tools and actually create first iterations of a homepage design, right? To get to a point where it's like, yeah, this is in the general direction of where I want to go. And then I can hand it off to a professional to either make it better or at least have a starting point to say, like, this is kind of the aesthetic of what I'm looking for. Right. And so, and by the way, there are certain things where I want to go to a designer because, like, the homepage, I want to nail. Right. But
Sure.
if I'm doing a landing page for a webinar that we're doing next week, I don't necessarily need to go to my agency to nail that, right? I could probably use the AI tools myself and build something comparable because I already know what my brand voice is, the style, whatever. I can use those tools myself. That was not possible at all, right? And so your point
Right.
about people who are not analytical or quantitative, now all of a sudden, I started the conversation by saying the CMO job and marketing's job in general is tough because you have to spike in all these different things. I view this concept of now as an employee, you will have access to digital employees and a set of tools that allow you to spike in each of those categories. You'll be able to do design work. You can now write amazing copy. You can do analytical work. You can actually do operations oriented work. You can do strategic oriented work, right? Like
Yeah.
all of those are possible. Um, and I think what's required in that sort of world is taste. So you when you use these tools, you got to know what good looks like,
Yes.
right? So like I know when I get output from the AI tools for something like an image or even when I'm working with copy, because I was a former product marketer and I worked with designers, right? Like I have
Yeah.
gotten an understanding of what is considered good from a messaging standpoint, what is
Right.
considered good or good enough from a design standpoint, right? And so I think anyone who has experience right now in marketing can be supercharged with the
Yeah.
use of these tools.
Yeah. I'm finding the same. If I, for those who are listening, right, I had a weird look on my face when he said that you have that. I can't remember what was the word you used. Taste. You have to have taste, and I was like, what does he mean by that? And when you describe, like, knowing what good is, which is also subjective, right, in a lot of these cases. But like for me, one of the things I've learned I have to do when I'm using, we'll just keep it down to LLMs, right, is like when I have found it to work best is when I feed it really good examples of my own first pass of stuff, and it
Hmm.
makes it better, right? Or it feeds me something and I go, I don't really like this, right? I think it works both ways in different scenarios. But I think, like you, I think it's, I don't know that I would say it's supercharged me, but it definitely has improved communication and things like that. So um, I'm bullish on it for sure, and I think it's becoming more and more of a part of my like daily routine is to use that. So um, I want to go back to the whole concept of like budget allocation though a little bit. I mean, one of the things you said when we talked before was that it was easier for you to kind of get and allocate budget for programs than it was for marketing ops, right? Why do you like tell me more about what you meant by that and why do you think that was the case, and you know what were the results of that?
Yeah, I mean, so to answer that question, you got to back up a second to a higher order question, which is like in general for marketing for CMOs, it was always easier to get program spend than it was to get headcount spend, regardless of department, like whether it was MOPS
Mm,
or product marketing, right? Um, and the reason why is because there's a direct correlation between programs that you run and pipeline that you generate, and pipeline that you generate has a direct correlation to sales, right? So
sure.
if you can
Yep.
basically
Okay.
say for every dollar I spend in program, I'm able to generate, $3 or $4 in pipeline, and we have a 25% close rate, you can have a direct line to like every dollar you spend is going to generate X dollars in revenue. And
Sure.
it was very easy to make that case, right?
Yeah.
And what people didn't appreciate is you can give me, and I actually had a CEO ask me this, like, what if I gave you unlimited program spend? Tell me the number. You tell me what you need in terms of program spend, and I'll give it to you. And I was like, even if you gave me an unlimited amount of program spend, I couldn't use it. And he
Right.
said, why not? I'm like, because someone at the end of the day has to create these programs. Someone has to, like, LinkedIn doesn't just manage itself, right? Like, someone's got to work with the designers and work with the copywriters and then log on to LinkedIn and upload the images. And then, by the way, when someone registers for something in LinkedIn, we want to do a follow-up email. So how do I integrate the LinkedIn stuff back into, our marketing automation system and trigger off an email? But by the way, if I trigger off an email, someone has to design that email. And then if someone responds to that email, how do I route that lead to the appropriate sales rep,
Right.
right? And I was like going on, and you see the glazed look in the CEO guy, right? Like,
I can only
um,
imagine.
and so it was sort of like, so it was really difficult to get headcount spend, even when I went to say, can I get product marketing, whatever. And so you started thinking about where can I allocate resources and what are the more critical resources. And so depending on the stage of the company, marketing operations, unfortunately, was always the last to get resourced, right? That
Yeah.
team, that poor team was always overworked, right? And
Yep.
trying to juggle many different sets of things.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
being
as,
heroic, right? Still
and
trying to
being
get stuff
heroic,
done. Yeah.
absolutely, right? Like I talked to a CMO, um, and who invested in our tools, and I asked the question, like, why did you buy our solution? He said, I wanted to give my team their Friday nights back. And I was like, that
Mm,
is just brilliant, right? Like he experienced the same thing that my team experienced, which is like,
sure.
this team is just dedicated. They want to do a great job. They're working insane hours, right? And they get it done. But as it doesn't scale. So what ends up happening
Right.
is as you get larger, you start putting in SLAs, like the team is going to be able to turn around a program. It started off when you're really small in like a couple of days. And then as you get larger, it grew to a week. And
Yep.
then as you got even larger, it grew to like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, right? And that's how you end up managing the resourcing issue. And um, and so this was kind of the problem with staffing. So that's why I tried offshoring. I tried a variety of different things. I'm like,
Right.
ultimately, it's just how do we improve velocity of this team? And I think um, by the way, in any of these marketing departments, you have the same sets of issues. Like they're all, in general, marketing departments are understaffed relative to what you see
Yeah.
on the sales side, relative to what you see on the customer support side, right?
Agreed.
It's also part of the reason why you see these CMOs just burn out. And for that matter, a lot of marketers just burn out. They're understaffed. But I think, in the realm of AI and this concept of digital employees that could be members of the team, where you can start offloading some of these tasks to members of these team, now is going to free up marketers to be able to do the kinds of stuff that they weren't previously able to do, right? Like all the kinds of strategic work, analytical work that we were trying to drive, or creative work that we were trying to drive from our team, like they're now going to have the time to be able to do this. And I think, these organizations that are thinking about AI around driving efficiency, I know that's the discussion at the board. Like, how do we
Right.
use AI to drive efficiency? It's the wrong way of thinking about this. Like that CMO who said it's about giving my team their Friday night back as a starting point, and then this
Sure.
realization that once they have breathing room, once they have the ability to step back and think about what is it that we're really trying to achieve, because they now no longer are running, 100 miles an hour, you're gonna unlock. Assuming, Michael, the question you asked earlier, which is, did you hire the right people? Like, assuming
Sure.
you've hired the right people, they're going to be able to grow and to be able to do things in your organization that weren't previously being able to be done, right? And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
really the unlock to me of AI.
Yeah. I've heard someone call it a time dividend. Right. So that's the real thing that this AI stuff is going to unlock, is a time dividend. So to your point, right, which to me is like, it's that thing, like it frees up people to do things that take advantage of their particular skills and knowledge and experience and their, whatever their gifts are, right, that maybe aren't, they just haven't had time to do. Um,
That's right.
and I think that's huge. I'm curious a little bit. So all this makes sense about like being able to part of it, I think why like program spend is easier to do also is because it's like it's visible, right? It's very visible. Like the result of it is something, it's on your website or it's an ad or it's an event or whatever, right? It's very concrete. Um, when it came down to marketing ops, right? You mentioned like getting headcount is harder. Like, did you find sort of within the marketing ops domain also that it was easier to get budget approval for new tech than people as well?
Um, no, it
No. Okay.
wasn't. Um, it wasn't. And um, for me, I think this is a lot of this is very CMO dependent.
Right.
So I am a CMO who's technical. So when folks came in with, and so, folks would come in all the time with, can we go off and get this technology? And I'll be like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And invariably I would get tech speak.
Yep.
Now, I understand tech speak. So I understand what they were asking for. But, part of the job of the CMO is to mentor. So I would say, so what? 2 words, so what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Help me understand, why should I care as a business person? I
Yep.
understand what you're trying to do in terms of trying to drive efficiency or trying to unlock X, Y, and Z. But how, at the end of the day, is it going to make life better? And I have this framework that I use, which is, I call it the AGE framework, which is around awareness, growth, and execution. Like, these are the 3 areas that I cared about, right? So when I
Okay.
was thinking about, like, when you pitch a technology, pitch it in one of these 3 ways to address my so what question. Now, awareness is not what you would think it is. It's not external awareness. Like, are you driving brand awareness? It's actually internal awareness.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
part of the job of marketing is to market yourself and market the team. So, and whether we like it or not, marketing is a service organization. We service sales, we service support, we service the executive staff, we service a lot of internal constituents as well as customers. And I know CMOs love to talk about, like, it is about the customer, and 100% I'm not disagreeing, but like, you you would be in a world of hurt if you didn't realize that you're a services organization and you have to address these constituents. So when I'm talking about awareness, I'm talking about, does this technology improve marketing's awareness internally? So as something as simple as, you have sales reps who are complaining that marketing is throwing over junk leads. Like, marketing never throws over good leads. I'm always getting junk.
Right.
The reality is
Yeah.
there's like 2 leads out of the 100 that they just got that were junk, and they fixate on the 2, not the 98 that were good.
Right.
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 So if someone came to me and said, hey, I have a technology, don't get into the details of what it is, but it's like, I can solve this problem around junk. Like, I can reduce the number of legitimate junk leads, or leads that are not our persona, like students or, unemployed people or whatever, people who just simply are not going to be buyers of our product.
Right.
I can reduce that so that the signal to noise is much, much better. Like, the leads that the sales reps are getting are all good. You know what? That sounds like a home run, because that's going to improve awareness. Like, all of a sudden, marketing is generating good leads. I'm not seeing crappy leads from marketing. The reality is
Right.
we're still generating some crappy leads. It's just now sales is not seeing them, right? So
Right.
that's this concept of awareness.
Love that.
So if you can pitch awareness, great. Growth is an easy one. Like, if you can have a direct line to revenue. So I'm going to go purchase this particular tool because it's going to allow me to execute this type of marketing campaign that's going to generate these kinds of leads, which ultimately is going to build pipeline. And as a CMO, I never cared about leads. I thought that was the wrong way of measuring marketing. I actually thought it was more important to talk about pipeline, because that allowed us to align more closely to sales.
Yep.
So if you came to me and you're like, this tool is going to help drive pipeline, and it was believable, like, I would ask a couple questions like, is this just the vendor pitch, or like, how do you think about it actually driving pipeline? And if it was believable, that's a no-brainer, right? So if you can drive growth with that tool spend, no-brainer. And the last is around execution, right? And the execution is also tied to internal awareness. Like, the execution piece is, put yourself in the CMO spot when she's going to the board and that board is saying, hey, I just saw our competitor, like, they are at every trade show. And this, by the way, happened to me. They are at every trade show. I see their ads on every website that I go to. And their homepage is amazing and ours stinks.
Yep.
And I went, I did a LinkedIn search, and I was like, I looked at the competitor. It turns out that competitor had 25 people in marketing. We had 4.
Yeah.
So how do you out execute a team that's got 25 people and you've got 4, right?
Yeah.
So if there are tools that are going to allow my team to have leverage to make that 4-person organization behave like a 25-person organization, so that I don't get asked that question in the boardroom, like, why is competitor X doing X, Y, and Z? That's worth it to me, right? So if you can frame in one of these 3 areas, it's a home run.
Yeah, that's I'm sitting here nodding my head at every one of those. I think the awareness one being internal, because that is not what I expected, is a really that's a really good insight. Because I think most marketers, which is surprising me, are not very good at marketing themselves internally, right? So telling that story. Yeah, one of the things I think a lot of marketing ops folks would talk about, and maybe it's tied to this execution one, is that, like, there's a time saving efficiency component. Is that a part of your thought process, or like, what do you like, or is that like not really what you're trying to get at? Because it feels like it's close, but maybe not really what you're talking about.
Well, to me, it is the execution, right? But I don't necessarily, like, the way you position it to a CMO is not necessarily time savings. It's like, hey, you know how we're only able to launch one campaign every 6 weeks, and our competitors are launching one every couple of days? I can now launch one every couple of days. Now, you're making the same argument, right? Like, I'm freeing up time, productivity, et cetera, to allow me to be able to do more with the same amount of resources, but I'm just framing it slightly differently, right? In a language that the CMO cares about. And then, unfortunately, like, it's good CMOs, like the one that I was talking about previously, where it's like, I want to give my team their Friday nights back. Your people are your assets. So
Yeah.
the CMO, that is an argument that will resonate with the CMO around productivity, but that CMO has to translate that to a board and to a CEO who doesn't always care about the well-being of employees. I'm sad to
Sure.
say, right?
Yeah.
They just care about the bottom line. And so the way I would communicate up is like, hey, we're talking about these kinds of constraints. What if I could improve the productivity of the team to be able to generate? And the way I would talk about it is like, if I generate X number of campaigns, I'm generating 5 more campaigns a week. And I know every campaign, this comes back to the analytics, every campaign I generate generates X dollars in pipeline. I should be able to generate an incremental Y dollars in pipeline.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I'm talking in a language that the board understands.
Yeah.
And still talking about, like, at the end of the day, this is productivity for my team, but I'm not messaging productivity for my team when I'm talking upwards. And so I try to encourage that skill in all my team members, because at some point they're going to rise to the level of a CMO and they're going to have these discussions at the board, and they're going to need to communicate those in the language that is understood. And the language at all levels of an organization is different. Like,
Yeah.
the way you
For sure.
explain things at all languages at all levels are going to be different.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you're talking this connection. You brought it up a couple of times, right? I could do X programs or do whatever, and it's going to be kind of a direct line to pipeline. So the on again, off again debate about attribution reporting continues to this day, right? I'm curious, like, because I haven't heard you talk about attribution or influence pipeline revenue. You talked about pipeline and revenue, right? So how do you think about attribution versus some other models for measuring the impact of a marketing team?
Okay, I'll give you a contrarian take. At least I think it's contrarian. I hate attribution. I don't want to do attribution. I think
Not at all.
attribution is the single reason why CMOs get fired.
Mm,
I also think attribution is the single biggest contributor to conflict between sales and marketing. And the reason is because the moment you start talking attribution, you start getting into, well, wait a minute. Did marketing actually generate that lead? Like, I, as a sales rep, called that lead and left voicemails, like a dozen voicemails, before they responded to that marketing asset. And then the marketer on my team would be like, yeah, but they didn't respond to yours, but we put out this amazing asset. And they were like, well, they wouldn't
right.
have learned about you if and so you have this back and
This,
forth. And I was like,
yeah, butting heads.
this
Yep.
is silly, right? We should not be talking about who's responsible for generating the lead. The only thing we should be focused on is, like, how do we get that lead into pipeline? This is why
Yeah.
on my team felt very uncomfortable about talking about pipeline, because they're like, we don't influence pipeline. What if they don't follow up with the lead? And I'm like, look, sales, they are incented on closing business.
Yep.
They're not lazy. As much as we'd like to think that they're not following up with leads because they're lazy, they're not incented to be lazy. So if you're giving them good quality leads, they will follow up. If you're
Yep.
giving them bad leads, they're not going to follow up, right? So don't fixate on the leads, because if you fix on the leads, you're going to give them a lot of junk. Fixate on the pipeline, the actual high quality leads. And I don't care who generates it, right? I don't care if it was marketing generated. I don't care if it was sales generated. I just care, do we have enough pipeline to meet the number for the quarter? And
Yep.
that's how I would like to think. So I think if I was a CMO and if I was interviewing, and if the CEO started asking me questions around how would you measure marketing attribution, I would walk, because
Mm,
that to me is a CEO who's going to create this natural tension between sales and marketing, unnecessary tension, as opposed
yeah.
to, it's a team sport. Like, we all have to work in alignment, in concert with each other, in order to actually be able to drive pipeline. Now, I'll get the question like, well, then if you're not measuring attribution, how do you know what marketing programs to run?
Yep.
How are you figuring out return on program spend, right? And I would actually say You don't necessarily need attribution, like this was sales generated, this is marketing generated. You just need to know, like, okay, I ran these. It's so simple. I ran these number of programs. How many of them generated net new leads? And how many of those net new leads actually made it into pipeline? I don't care how many touches or who ended up doing it, but like, are we seeing stuff from our events go into pipeline? And is it going to pipeline at a higher rate than some of our digital campaigns? And if so, what is that rate? How many programs do I need to be running in order to be able to generate a certain pipeline number, right? So you begin thinking not only in terms of leads, but in terms of conversion rates. And the conversion rates are going to vary based on channel that you're using. And for every business, like the ideal channel is going to be different. And so this notion of a CMO coming in with a playbook, like a predefined playbook, generally doesn't work, right? So, but this is part of the discovery that gets to be done. But if your team is fixated on like, yeah, it was this particular touch point that caused the lead to go from a lead to an MQL to an SQL, it's just a battle lost.
Yeah, no, so I'm curious because my take on attribution is not to just throw it out because but if I was to, when I talk about it, if I think it's been misused. I think it's the short version, right? It's been used to do this credit game, or to, yeah, and I agree with you. It probably is, at least if not the cause, is a major part of why there's friction between sales and marketing. But I think there's a place for it still. I would push really hard to like, don't spend a lot of money on a tool or resources to do it. Do one, like, get as simple a solution as you can, use it consistently over time so you can see trends. But it's used within marketing to help go like what channels with what customer, target audience or whatever is working most effectively. And it's more of a guide. If you're taking it up to the executive team or the board, that's where I think you're starting to like, then you're losing for sure.
100%. And to your point, like that would be one of the tools. If my marketing team came and said, I wanted to go buy an attribution tool, I would say no. We have UTM parameters that we're using. That should be more than enough to figure out, whether a particular lead came from a particular campaign that we ran. I know it's controversial, but like, it is just like, to me, this is, it's one of these opinions that is grounded on just, I think it's bad for culture. And so I've just seen too many instances of this just gone wrong. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny though, because I still see regularly job postings for marketing ops roles that are, especially leadership ones, are like part of the job is to implement marketing attribution. Part of it is to do, build marketing dashboards. And I'm like, those are things that to me, I'm like, first off, why are you building attribution? Like, what's the why, and how's it going to be used? How do you and then on dashboards, I'm like, again, not a problem with reporting, but starting with the idea that if you need a dashboard before you need to know, did we get the number of people registered for this webinar we were promoting, right? Which sounds pretty basic, but I think a lot of organizations don't even do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. On a consistent basis.
And don't get me wrong, like I'm a big believer in analytics. The dashboards, 100%, go create them. But like the dashboards that are saying, here's the leads generated by sales versus marketing, I don't want to see those in my dashboard.
Right. All right. So you've mentioned this a little bit off and on, right? This idea of agents or AI tools, things like that, and your company is focused on that. How is your perspective on all this stuff tied with AI and all that changed since you've kind of moved on from CMO roles?
Yeah, I mean, so I think I have a great deal of empathy for what the marketing organizations deal with, clearly.
Yeah.
And so when we went to start allGood, it was this nagging thing that I had in my head, which is I was never appropriately resourced, which is what we've been spending most of the time talking about. So I saw the advent of AI, and I just thought this is going to do a huge unlock in a lot of organizations. And I saw the influx of tools that were coming in, right? And there are a lot of AI tools that are out there. And I'm going to classify them as builder tools. And, there is this talk now around going off and hiring a GTM engineer and, to be the owner of all things AI. And I just think it's a stupid idea. And the reason why I say it's a stupid idea, it's like, okay, let's rewind. Microsoft Word comes out, first word processor, right? How
Yep.
many organizations were saying we need to go hire like a Word engineer or like someone who just specializes in Microsoft Word, right? And now
Depends on if
anytime
they've
you
been
have a,
using WordPerfect or not before, you know.
I mean, the tool should be so easy that
Yeah.
everyone should use it, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, so I had this view that AI was going to be something that was going to be like Microsoft Word, like everyone is going to use it. And I get these questions from CMO, like, should I hire someone to be like in charge of AI? And I said, absolutely not. No, that's the wrong way of thinking about this. Like everyone in the organization should be using AI. I happen to believe that to get effective use of AI, you're going to need the appropriate context, like providing the system the appropriate context. So integrating your data systems. And so there's an infrastructure layer that you're going to need to build. And, shout out to MOPS. Like this is the real opportunity for you to drive the AI initiatives, but it
Yes.
shouldn't be something that is just controlled by one group. It literally should be an infrastructure that's built that everyone is able to leverage. Now, that said, I look at this and I said there are a lot of do-it-yourself tools, and all of these do-it-yourself tools require expertise. And
Mm-hmm.
the notion of like me going off and hiring engineers, like I don't, as a marketer, I mean, I'm a technical marketer, but no marketer wants to be an engineer, or very few marketers want to be. If they wanted to be an engineer, they wouldn't be in marketing. They'd be an
Right.
engineer. Like the marketers that I hired because they were creative, they were strategic, right? They were analytical. Those are the assets that I was looking for. That's the reason why people get in this business, not to like piece together code and do this sort of stuff. So our view is that you're going to have these digital employees that come
Yeah.
out of the
Talk about
box,
that.
right? That come out of the box, that integrate into systems and do the work. Like you're not building prompts, you're not doing the integrations. Like this is just out of the box. And the way I think about this is uh, these digital employees act just like a regular employee. So our customers, our digital employee, we call her Mary. So Mary has she gets a Workday account. She gets an Okta account. She gets, an Asana account. She gets a Marketo HubSpot account. She may even get a Salesforce account. She gets onboarded like a real employee. You can chat with Mary like you would chat with a real employee. Mary may actually come back to you with, hey, I know you want me to build this email, but like I have questions around X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't know any better, you would think that you are interacting with someone on the marketing team, marketing operations team, right? And so,
Right.
so you have Mary that just out of the box works. You start looking at these stats where like 95% of these AI projects go nowhere. And
Yeah.
the reason why they go nowhere is because it requires so much care and lifting to make them work. So if you come out of the box with a digital employee that has very focused use cases that are on marketing, that can out of the box work and talk to all the different systems, now all of a sudden, so I'll go back to the beginning of the conversation. I don't necessarily need to hire someone who is familiar with HubSpot, because you know what? Mary's familiar with HubSpot. I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily need to go off and hire someone who has, lean data experience or ring lead experience. You know why? Because Mary can do all of that stuff, right? So
Sure.
what I'm hiring for now is people who are going to think about, in the instance of the AI world, like, are they curious? Are going to be thinking about business process? How are they going to use Mary to reimagine things, right? Like it
Right.
goes back to the intelligence and curiosity that you hire for, not systems related. And it
Yeah.
just changes the way you think about building orgs.
Yeah. I remember we talked about this before, and I think you may have even asked me something like, "How would I approach onboarding an AI or a digital employee?" Right. I think it was the first time I'd heard that term. And I think I said, like, I think I would probably do it very much like I would with any new employee, especially a more junior person, right? And the thing that to me would be different, and this is probably my style, right? Is like I like to really handholds, not really the right word, but really like try to be there as a resource early on, and then over time give someone more and more freedom to act independently. And I'd want to do this like if it was a digital employee, I'd want to do something similar. What I feel like the way I've dealt with some of the tools is when I get to something like that, right, I have to define for it, right, what that threshold is in some way that is fairly concrete, right? So the way I've done that in the past is like if I'm having it, this is ChatGPT, like I'm evaluating something, like, and I give it the things I care about, right? Come up with a score. I don't even tell it how to come up with a score. I just say these are the things I care about. Come up with a score from 0 to 100, right? But only show me the things that are 70 and above, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's worked well. I don't know what's cutting out, so that's like one of the mysteries. I guess I could ask that too. Um, but I think I would do it the same way. So as this digital employee I got comfortable. I was like, you're good to go, unless your confidence level is below 80%, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe over time, like let's move it up to 85%, or sorry, move it down, like, move it up. Let's start with like if you're 95% and move it down to 85 and so on, right? Um, but
Well,
anyway,
I mean, gosh, there's so many interesting things about that comment. Like, I think, so a couple things. Mistakes people end up making is they think you're gonna bring on AI and it's just gonna do everything magically. Like it just works. A digital employee would be like you hiring an intern and not managing them.
yeah,
Like someone has got to provide oversight, right? And so this is where I come back to the comment I made about taste.
yeah,
Mary's going to create stuff and Mary's going to do stuff, but someone has to review it to say, is it good or not? Right? Because she will go through and she will clean up data. She will classify things. She speaks 58 languages. She works 24/7. Like she is going to be your most favorite teammate, right? She's going to do this
yep,
kind of stuff that you don't get around to doing, and she's going to make you look good. And
yep,
but it's only going to work if you have the taste and the tolerance to be able to give Mary feedback, because she's not always going to get it right. This is the thing about reasoning based systems versus rules, and
right,
this view of like how the future is changing. Like the advantage right now is we're entering an age of reasoning, and all of the systems in the past were highly deterministic, meaning you'd create a rule in HubSpot, a flow,
right,
whatever it may be in Marketo, and it was like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And it worked really well until it didn't,
yep,
right? And there was a lot of times where it didn't. And so you spend a lot of time tuning it. Now with LLMs, you just provided a problem and you tell it what your desired outcome is, and it will start thinking through that problem and try to figure it out. So as an example, you would say in the old way, like if you wanted to classify a job title, you would say, I care about marketing. So if the job title contains marketing or MOPS or marketing operations or MKT ops or MKT operations, and you're smiling because it's like the list is endless. You're never
I've
going to
done
get all
this,
of that. Yeah, right.
right,
In a reasoning based world, you tell an LLM, I care about anyone who's in the marketing ops category.
yep,
That's it. I don't need to give examples. I don't need to do any of that. And it's amazingly good at doing that. Now,
yep,
it will miss things,
yep,
right? So it will classify something as MOPS as an example when it shouldn't be. And so you end up giving feedback to Mary like, hey, this is not MOPS. This should be classified as this. And the amazing thing is it knows that it stores it. And the next time it sees something like this, it learns from it, right? And it
yeah,
learns all the variations as well. But you got to spend the time, providing the feedback and the review.
yeah. I mean, I've got several ongoing things with ChatGPT, and I do where it makes sense. I provide it feedback,
Yeah.
right, and it's done a good job of that. Yeah, I was smiling when you were describing that because I was thinking like I built something using Alteryx years and years ago, and it was just a thing that I ran every month, but it was complicated. Right, pulled a bunch of data from different sources, but like every month it would break because some new value that I hadn't anticipated would show up in the source to go fix it. Luckily, it was like usually go like, oh, fix it in this one spot and then rerun it, and it was fine. But it was a constant thing I had to do. Right,
Mm-hmm.
run the flow, it would break, go fix it, run the flow, oh, different thing, break, fix it, right? And it's, yeah, I mean, that by itself, like the ability to do things like job function standardization or job level standardization, banking excluded, right? Because everybody's a
Yeah.
VP, but
Yeah.
um, it's huge. So, um, Ahmed, I wish we had more time. I really do. Like, I feel like we
In,
just scratched the surface of this, right?
invite me back. I'm happy to come back.
Well, you should come to Mopsapalooza. That's what you
I
need to
will.
do.
Actually, I will be there.
Oh, good, good, good. Well, I am still on the fence, so I'm still trying to figure out a way to get there, but I'm hopeful. Um, if folks want to connect with you, continue this conversation, or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, they can go to allgoodhq.com. That's our website. I'm on LinkedIn. Just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome, that's terrific. Well, thank you again for your time. This has been a lot of fun. I think we're gonna have lots of controversial stuff that we'll be able to use to promote this, because I think that's going to be a game. But no, it was actually really good. I think a lot of our listeners will benefit from getting your perspective as a CMO about how marketing ops is viewed and what you care about and how you have to then communicate things. I think there's needs to be more of that. So thank you for that. Thank you to our supporters and listeners and soon viewers. We really appreciate you. Thank you for that. If you have ideas for guests or topics or want to be a guest, you can reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we'd be happy to get the ball rolling on it. Until next time, bye everybody.